Hey, what's up, everyone? It's Dr. Glenvo, and I am excited to have this guest on the podcast today. But before I introduce who she is, let me ask you something here. What if I told you that it was possible for you to have more? What if I told you that's possible and that you deserve more? And what if I told you that there's someone who understands Gen Xers, right? And she's helped so many professionals in her career. She's dedicated her career, not only helping Gen Xers, but everyone else that she comes in contact with. Well, I have that person today, Robin Carberry. Robin, what's up?
It's so good to be here, Glenn. I'm super excited for this.
And I've been wanting to get you on the podcast. And here's the thing, Robin's a busy person here, right? So I've been kind of watching her from afar, just admiring what she's doing. I finally got her on this podcast, and you're going to learn exactly why I've been wanting to bring her on. But Robin, just let me ask you just really quickly, if someone is just wondering like what you do, and if you could just briefly describe, and we're going to dive further in it, but briefly describe, what do you do? What do you do in your business?
So I help Gen X women untangle the knot of midlife confusion, uncover what they're here to do, and unleash more flow, meaning, success, connection, and joy in their lives.
Wow. Well, I'm going to tell you what, that sounds amazing. But there's always a beginning, right? There's always a backstory. You have a pretty cool backstory, right? So if we can kind of just step a few steps back in time, what kind of like motivated you to kind of get into what your business does? Let's talk about that. And then we'll just lead into what you actually do today.
Okay, well, I'll give you the Cliff Notes version because I am 56 years old. I am an OG Gen Xer. So to give you the backstory might take some time. I'm going to collapse it. So I'm from New York originally, born on Long Island, grew up there, went to Cornell University, graduated, moved to Boston, worked at a tech startup for 4 years, decided done with snow and cold, moved to North Carolina, worked at another tech startup, got sent to Cleveland when my job went away because the departments got combined, and they're like, oh, we don't really know what to do with you. We don't want to fire you. We're just going to send you to a consulting gig in Cleveland for 3 months with no notice. And I was like, if I'm going to work 80 hours a week and I'm just going to get sent somewhere on a whim, and I don't even know if I'm going to have a job when I come back, maybe I should start working for myself. So I bought a restaurant in a small town in Eastern North Carolina, and I moved there without knowing anybody.
Wow.
So I ran the restaurant for 8 years. I ended up meeting my husband, or the man I was going to marry, during that period of time. And I also got diagnosed with lupus. So that meant that running a restaurant, like a small restaurant in a small town, meant I did everything from wash the dishes to the food orders to the payroll to making pizzas to all the things. And it just wasn't physically possible for me to keep doing that. So sold the restaurant. This was in the early 2000s, and was like, all right, what am I going to do now? The internet wasn't really so much of a thing at that point in time. We were still in dial-up in this tiny little town. And I also needed something that was steady and solid and had health insurance, and I could sort of clock in and clock out while I took care of myself and got my health back. So I went to work at a law firm, and I was a paralegal for 16 years. And it was great in that I could clock in and I could clock out and take care of myself. But when I regained my health, I realized I was losing another very important part of me, and that was my soul. I felt like it was being sucked out of my body. And at that point, I was in my mid-40s, and I was like, what am I going to do? Is it too late to do something new? Is it too late to try something different? And I started working with a career coach, and she was like, Robin, you've run your own business. You have internet. Why don't you start your online business? And I was like, well, dang, I guess I could do that, couldn't I? So that was about 6 years ago. And I started out doing digital marketing and coaching for health and wellness professionals. But I realized through my own journey being in the online space, I felt like I was surrounded by millennials. And don't get me wrong, I love millennials, but I felt like nothing was speaking to me and my experience. Like, who were the people who spoke my language,
Yeah.
who could explain that, who explained things in terms that like I understood without having to figure it all out myself, which I could do, but like it just felt lonely. And I realized that in a couple groups, I stuck my hand in the air and I was like, any Gen Xers in the house? And all of a sudden, like people would start coming out of the woodwork and they'd be like, me. And I realized this was a whole group that was really not feeling like they were served and not feeling like they were spoken to. And Gen Xers like typically feel like they're not spoken to because it's all about the boomers. It's all about the millennials. Like nobody talks to us. We're the forgotten generation. So that's how I ended up where I am right now.
I love it. So as a fellow Gen Xer, I can totally relate. And what's so scary is that for a long time, we just thought of like Gen Xers as like, we had our parents, right? And we're like Generation X, right? And now we're like kind of like the parents and like, in some cases, grandparents. And it's for me, whenever I think about that, I'm just like, wow, that's just like a crazy shift, right? And it's such a short amount of time. But again, there's specific qualities of every generation. We have very specific qualities, right? So I just love it that you work with, again, there's so many great coaches out there, right? There's so many great coaches, consultants, but it helps so much to have someone with the kind of same background. And when we tell the same jokes, right? We would say, do you remember these shows? You can relate there.
Right.
Let me ask you this. As you had me, just to let you guys know, and this is something I love about Robin, she's very thorough. She had me take an assessment. It's a Sparke Type Assessment, right? And so let me ask you this. Tell me about the assessment. Why do you have your clients take the assessment? And what's so effective about, what do you like about it so much?
So it really appeals to me because, well, for a couple of reasons. So first of all, it's really focused on the type of work that lights you up, that brings you joy, that gives you energy as opposed to draining you. And when I took it myself for the first time, I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like this is the missing piece to how I've been helping people. Because I have conversations all the time about like, what is it that you really love to do? What are you really good at? And what's the intersection between those things? But this assessment goes deeper than that. It's based on like science and research and all those good things that like good personality type assessments are based on, but it's also easy to understand. So it categorizes you in 10 different Sparke types is what they're called. And your primary Sparke type is the type of work that really lights you up and drives you and gives you energy. It's the type of thing that you just do naturally without even thinking about it, without getting paid for it necessarily. But they're understandable things like advisor.
Yeah,
sage,
that's me. That was me, by the way. I was an advisor.
But they're easy to understand. The scientist, the essentialist, who is all about systems and systematizing, the nurturer, the advocate. They're simple to understand. And everybody who takes it that I've spoken to, not everybody, most people are like, oh my gosh, I feel like this is speaking to me and who I am. And it explains so many things about decisions I've made in the past, or why I just, I want to learn, but I don't necessarily want to implement, or why I don't like dealing with people or, working with people. I'd rather just be in my place and figuring out solutions to problems. It's just helped people so much. And then you can use it as a decision-making tool to help you evaluate opportunities, to help you develop your team, to help you put team members in the right places in the organization. There's so many applications for it. And when I took it, I was like, oh my gosh, this has got to be a part of the work that I do.
Yes. And the reason why I had you just kind of talk about your background, right, is because now that we gotten to this point where we're talking about this assessment, let me ask you this. Had you gotten this tool or took this assessment earlier in your life, do you think that it would have saved you a lot of time as far as like decision making and to get to and pivoting to the next thing in your career? Do you feel like that would have helped you?
So that's an interesting question, because taking the assessments requires, let me say that differently. So getting results from the assessment that are actually meaningful to you can require a little bit of self-knowledge and having done some self-work. So it could be that I would have taken the assessment years ago and the results were accurate, but I would have looked at them and said, no, that's not me, because
Yeah.
I have this conditioning about how I was supposed to show up and what success meant to me and who I was supposed to be in the world. And I might have said, advisor, no, that's not really who I am.
Yeah.
I'm not that person. So being able to put those things together, like having that self-knowledge and that insight to yourself that I didn't necessarily have when I was 22 or
Mhm.
25 or even 29 years old, that you just get over time and learn over time. And it's not an age-based thing necessarily. It's just about like your self-insight, really.
Sure, like knowing yourself and having those life experiences, right?
Mhm.
No, I absolutely love that. So when you work with your clients, do you generally put them through this assessment and then you kind of work them through and help them find the kind of like the next steps?
Yeah. So it's one tool that I start people with for sure, because it's the easiest for people to understand the results, and it's easiest for them to like then go back to their life and work experiences. And work in terms of the Sparke types is anything that requires energy. It's not necessarily just what you get paid for, but it's the relationships in your life, the roles you've played, the hobbies you have, the things you do for fun, courses that you've taken. It's all those sorts of things. All those things require effort. So having that like sort of understanding of what your Sparke type is, and then going back in your life and pulling out the experiences that put you in that state of flow, that gave you energy, that when you started doing that sort of work, you lost track of time and you let
Yeah.
10 minutes went by and it was 2 hours. And then you take those experiences combined with what your Sparke types are, and it becomes a decision-making tool for you to assess opportunities that aren't necessarily to do with the title of a specific job.
Mhm.
But they can even help you look at the current place that you're in, your business, if your business is draining you dry, or the particular job you're doing in your career. It helps you like look outside the box a little bit and say, okay, maybe there's some things we can shift around that will actually put me in a place where I feel better and I'm happier with what I'm doing.
I love it. I mean, it's almost it's liberating in the sense that a lot of times people feel like they're just kind of stuck somewhere, but it's almost like, when I was taking the assessment, I'm like, oh wow, like I just felt like I had some more knowledge. And we're always so preoccupied in life about thinking about it. Actually forces you to think about yourself. And for me, I'm always kind of thinking about how I can serve others and whatnot. And so it actually made me sit there, and actually, it was, just to let you guys know, it's not like a hard, it's like not like a hard test or anything, but it does require you to think a little. Like I thought I was like, I'm just gonna do this really quick. It actually took me a while, because if you truly want to do it and get the right results, you actually have to be honest, first of all, right? You got to
Right.
be honest. You got
Right.
to be honest, right? And it's not great or anything, but it makes you think. It makes you think. And as someone like me, who I'm always thinking about others, a lot of times I don't really think about myself too much. So that's what I love about it. So Robin, for those who are listening and they're curious, right? Maybe they're another Gen Xer and they're like, okay, you know what? All right, you got my interest here, Ms. Robin. I'm interested now. Like, so how does it work? How does it work for people to work with you? How does that work?
So you can reach out to me in a number of different places. You can go to my website, which is robincarberry.com, and book a quick chat with me, just to let's explore the idea of taking the assessment and see what it might be like to work together. You can send me a DM on Facebook or on Instagram. I'm hanging out in both those places. So LinkedIn, I'm there, to be honest. I have a profile. I don't really check the DMs all that often. It's probably not the best place to reach out to me. But
So
any
the,
of those other options I'm there all the time. So
so the
I would
first
love
step is,
to like meet and learn about
yeah.
anybody.
So the first step is to reach out, right? To reach out. And then
Mhm.
from there, after a short chat, you can figure it out, maybe take the assessment, maybe pivot to something else. But that's the first step. Okay. So I wanted to make sure, because people are listening. They're like, okay, I'm very interested, because, hey, Glenn went through and took the assessment, and we want to know what's going on. And we want Robin to help us out. Okay. So now that we got that out of the way, we're going to pivot a little bit. And so, you're an entrepreneur. Obviously, you've run a restaurant, you've worked for corporate, right? And now you work for yourself, right? So you've been through the whole entrepreneurial cycle. So I like this next assessment. It's called Big Entrepreneur 3. I'm going to ask you some entrepreneurial questions. And the first one is share a productivity tip that's worked really good for you. A tip, any kind of tip, like waking up early, getting to meetings 30 minutes early. What kind of tip that you would give to other people that's worked really good for you?
Prioritizing sleep.
That's a big one.
So I would say there's people who are going to be like, okay, I'm sorry, you don't know what my life is like, and I cannot prioritize sleep. But I will tell you, and I learned this through dealing with my lupus, that if I did not prioritize sleep, that I was not going to be able to function and show up as my best self. So the time that you spend, winding down, binging on Netflix, scrolling on your, all those things that really end up draining you of energy, putting those things aside, having a consistent bedtime to the extent that you can. Most people, first of all, think they need less sleep than they actually do, and think they sleep more than they actually do.
Yeah.
So consistent going to bed, consistent getting up, and getting enough sleep to the extent that you can is just going to make all the other things in your life easier.
I 100% agree with that. I mean, sleep is so important. And again, look, you don't have to prove anything. People always have to prove something, right? Like, oh yeah, I can work this much more. I can balance all these other things. You're not going to get like an award for that. Okay. The thing is you got to take care of yourself. And if you're not getting your sleep, then that leads to other, obviously there's performance problems. You're not going to be all there, but also health problems as well.
Mm-hmm.
And what's the point, right? What's the point of working hard if you can't take care of yourself health-wise? So that's a big one. That's a big one. I love that. Now, Robin, share like a tool that's helped you as an entrepreneur. It could be like a digital tool. It could be something that's not digital, like a notebook of some sort. What's a tool that's helped you as an entrepreneur?
Tracking my time. And this is something I learned as a paralegal, where I was required to track my time because
That's
everything
right. You
was
guys
about
bill
billable hours.
by the hour. You guys
right?
bill by the hour or by the
exactly.
minute. Yeah.
But what I realized in doing that is that I always, and it wasn't just me, it was pretty much everybody I came into contact with, we think things take less time than they do take. We're like, oh, I'm just going to write that email. Oh, it's going to take me 5 minutes. That's no big deal. And actually it takes you 30 because you have to think about what you're going to say and you type it out. And you're like, no, that's not really what I want to say. Let me change that. Let me fix that. Things always take more time than you think. So if you actually track the time that it takes you to do something for a week, I know that sounds like, oh my gosh, that's a big pain in the butt, Robin. I really don't want to do that. It will tell you so much about how you are spending your time. And maybe there are some things like that it doesn't make sense for you to actually do anymore. Maybe there are things that you do repeatedly that need to be systematized or processed. But it all starts with understanding how much time it actually takes you to do something. It also makes your to-do list more realistic when you're not trying to jam 20 things in that are going to take you 50 hours to do, and you're squeezing them into 6 hours on your calendar.
That's such an important exercise because, again, you also will find out how much time you're wasting too.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I really am on Instagram and TikTok that much. Maybe I need to cut down on that. I love that. Now, the next question is always hard. And again, one of our coaches, Robin and mine, we have a coach together, Julie Stoyan. This is the question that kind of stumped her when she was on the podcast. So I'm preparing you, Robin. I'm preparing you. Pick one. Okay, just one. All right. And I'll make it easy for you. The first one that pops in your head, pick one book, business or self-help, that is your favorite, and why is it? Okay,
I'm going to pick the book that follows me all over my house. It's called The Firestarter Sessions, A Soulful Guide to Creating Success on Your Own Terms. And you got to see,
look at all those notes.
90,000 little Post-it notes in it. So I bought this book a couple of years ago, and I go back to it all the time, which is why it follows me around the house. And why do I love it? Because I literally can open up to any page and see, okay, How can you tell if someone is in their zone? They show up because they're compelled to. They can hardly resist. They ask really good questions because they're always scanning for the right fit. They're really comfortable saying no to things that pull them away from what they love. Like, oh my gosh, there's so much right there that like is amazing. Normal is boring. Naturally driven excellence is not normal, by the way. So what I loved most about this is it was about defining your version of success, what it looks like for you, not what it looks like for all the other people, and then how to actually live your life based on that. So it's about discovering, uncovering your values and defining them, figuring out what success really means in your life, in your world, for you, how you want to feel when you wake up in the morning, how you want to feel when you go to bed at night, like what you want your life to look like, and then actually doing it, acting based on those things. So I answered a question that stumped Julie Stoyan.
Well, I'll tell you what, that book just went to the top of my list of books to read after that. Wow. Okay. Yes. Okay. I mean, I'm going to have to get that from you. We'll put that in the show notes for sure. Okay. So we're going to move on to another segment. And, a lot of times, and especially in our world, Robin, we always see people, we follow different people and we see like all these great things they're doing, right? All these great things. It's like this highlight reel of just amazing things they're doing. And then we kind of look back at ourselves and like, man, like I kind of wish I had that same life. But what people don't realize is that all that success, all that achievement, all the things that they acquired, it's the foundation has been like failures and mistakes and obstacles they went through. So in the spirit of that, I'm going to ask you, Robin, what is a mistake? Just pick one. If you're like me, you probably have a whole bunch and it's hard to pick one. Just pick one, but pick a mistake that you learned something really significant from and share that with us.
So I know I'm only supposed to pick one, but this is a two-pronged mistake.
Okay.
So the first piece of it is not listening to my gut when it came to working with somebody. And when my gut told me no, I went ahead and said yes anyway, because I was like, oh, it'll be okay. My gut's probably wrong. I need the money, whatever the reason happened to be. And then compounding that error by continuing to try and fix it and make it work and try and try and try and try and try, because it must be my fault that it isn't working. Yeah. It must be something I'm doing wrong. I've got to fix this, instead of realizing that I should have listened to my gut in the first place, and then I should have cut my losses and parted ways in a professional, responsible way, of course, not just by ghosting. But when it's not, the relationship isn't working for you with a client, it's probably not working for the client either. Yeah. So parting ways is the best way for both of you to move forward.
That is like, that answer has actually come up several times within the podcast with different guests. So again, just listening to your gut. And my mom always used this quote when we talk about like listening to your gut. She says, you cannot listen to your gut, but do so at your own peril. And that's what she said. She's like, you can go against your instincts, but you're doing so at your own peril. Okay. You're going against the grain, and you're going to suffer the consequence. So I love that. And it's one of those things that has come up and people have talked about it. Right. And of course, time is short, right? Time is short. And why do you want to spend your time just trying to make something work when it's not going to work? So I love that. That's a good mistake. And that's a good lesson right there. Now, if you could go back in time, okay? So look, we're Gen Xers, right? So if you could get into that DeLorean, right? And go back in time, okay? You should understand that. Go back in time. And you could go and talk to the younger Robin. And I'll let you pick any version of yourself, any younger version of yourself. What would you say to her? And you only had like 1 minute before you had to go back to the future.
Okay, so I might have answered this question differently yesterday, but today while I was making lunch, I was catching up on the Masters, watching the Golf Channel. Yes, because I'm old, I watch the Golf Channel. And they were interviewing Raymond Floyd, and he won the Masters like back in 1976 or something. And he said something that was really fascinating to me. And that's that, they're asking him about his success and all that. And he's like, I was the golfer that wasn't afraid to lose. And because I wasn't afraid to lose, I was open to opportunities. I was open to like doing something that was maybe a little bit against the grain. And that's what helped me win. He said, did it always work out? No, but I fully believe that because I wasn't afraid to lose, I saw opportunities that other people did not see. And I was like, wow, Raymond Floyd, I'm going to like write that down on my whiteboard. And that is like the gist of what I've gone back in time and told my older self anyway. I just like the way he said it and how he tied it to golf specifically, but you can apply that to life.
How many times have you, I mean, I can tell you how long that, and honestly, I want our viewers to think about this. How many times have we been scared to do something because we were scared to fail? Or you know what, let me rephrase that. When you're younger, you're scared of looking like dumb in front of people, right? Or embarrassed, right?
Yep.
You're scared to, I don't know, ask so-and-so out to the dance or whatever. So you didn't want to get rejected, right? And as we get older, you think back at that, it's like, God, that wasn't such a big deal, right? And something that I always remember is that if you don't do something that you really feel strongly about, or you don't take that chance, then the sting of the regret that you feel, right? That sting lasts with you for the rest of your life. The sting that you feel if someone says, oh, I would not go out with you or whatever, that's just like right then and there, right? You get over it, right? But the sting of regret lasts for a long time, if not forever. So, wow, that's a good one. That's another lesson right there, guys. Another lesson right there. Now, Robin, let's say we're at the mastermind. One of the new members comes up to you and says, okay, Robin, I want to do what you do, and tell me how to do it. And we're about to leave, and you'll have 1 minute to basically reverse engineer your business. So if someone comes up to you and says, I want to do what you do, and you won't have like less than a minute to explain to them how to do it, what would you say to them?
Glenn, the parameters. You like make it so hard. So to be honest, I would send them to the Sparke Type Assessment, because so many people think that coaching is the logical next step when they have perhaps they built a done-for-you business, a done-for-you service-based business. And they're like, I am so freaking over building funnels for people. I do not want to do this for another minute, but I'm really good at it.
Yeah.
And I could teach people how to do it. I could coach people through the process. And like, that would be amazing if coaching is the right thing for you. It is not right for everybody. So I would send them to the Sparke Types Assessment, because that helps you see, am I a service-based person? Is service what drives me? Or am I a process-based person? So if process and like deep dive into learning and figuring out problems and solving problems is your jam, then working with somebody in a coaching capacity is going to drain the out of you.
Yeah.
Like, it is not going to be the right thing for you. So it's not like this normal ladder of ascension that you go from like perfecting a skill at something and going to coach people at it. So I would want to make sure that like that is really the next level thing that makes sense for you before I would tell you how to like actually do that. And if coaching is right for you, there's a pretty daggone good chance that you're already doing it.
Yeah.
You just need to fully walk into it and own it and just stop doing the service. Because as long as you do the service, people are going to want you to do the service. They're not going to want you to coach them. They're going to want you to coach them for free.
Robin, I want to tell you, you're the first person to answer that question like that. And I love the answer. And it's spoken like a true, awesome coach. Spoken like true, awesome coach. Because again, like everyone that I've asked this of, they literally said, okay, well, if you want to do ads, then, or you want to do copyright, I want to use that, then, you know, you need to kind of take some courses to learn writing and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Or, hey, if you want to get into like helping people with their finances, hey, you need to get like some certifications, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But you, as the coach you are, and again, guys, if that didn't prove to you that she is an amazing coach, I don't know what will, but she dove at it as in, let's make sure that this is actually really what you want to do and you're meant to do that. I love that. I love that. And with that being said, so Robin, we talked about what you do, how you help entrepreneurs out, how to reach out to you. But again, like I'm going to ask you this. We talked about Gen Xers, and it is important, right? There's so many different coaches out there, so many amazing coaches. And the right coach is the one that you connect with, right? That you vibe with. And obviously being in the same generation is a big part of that. But Robin, what if someone who's a millennial that says, I kind of like her style, I'd like to get coached. Can they still seek you out? That's
Yes.
an extra question I just threw in there for you.
Yes, yes, of course. So, I mean, I do work with millennials. I work with boomers. I work with people in all generations. But my, I want to say like my true love is helping Gen X women. Partly because of what we talked about is like it's the forgotten generation, the generation nobody talks to, and I wanted to be one of the people that was talking to them. But I will work with anybody who is it's the right fit for both sides.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And so again, if you're a Gen Xer, hey, we have someone in our corner now, right? So before I ask you like how they can reach out to you again before we log off here, I'm gonna throw in some extra questions here because again, it's not often that I get another Gen Xer on here. So let me ask you this: what was your favorite band, and also your favorite TV show in high school?
Oh gosh. So I was one of those annoying new wave chicks that had the asymmetrical haircut.
I love new wave.
So my favorite band, it depended on the day. Like sometimes it was the Smiths, sometimes it was the Cure, sometimes it was Psychedelic Fur. I could go on and on, but those were some of my favorites. And my favorite TV show, gosh, in high school, I don't know. I liked Cheers.
Or let's just say growing up. I'll make it easier for you growing up.
Cheers was one of my favorites.
Yeah.
I was living in Boston actually, so it was a little bit out of, when they closed it down, I was actually, oh my gosh, the Cheers bar. How awesome is that? We can go there. Of course, it was like a tourist trap and not anything like the show. But yeah, that Cheers is one of my favorites.
Cheers. Okay. So, again, the reason why I asked, like, I'm a big TV and I'm a big music person. So when you said the Smiths and you said the Cure, I was like, yes. Of course I'm going to add like Depeche Mode and Erasure in there, throw those guys in there too. And here's the thing, the cool thing is that even now, like when I go to their concert, I watch them live. I know the Cure not too long ago, they got into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and I was just watching the performance and I was just like getting super excited, like I was like a kid, and they don't move as well as they used to, but it was still good. It was still amazing, amazing. I love it. So Robin, again, for those who want to work with you and they want to, to connect with you, best way again to get a hold of you so they can kind of start that journey with you.
So you can come to my website, which is robincarberry.com. And my last name is like the car you drive and the berries you eat. It's a lot simpler than people want to make it. Or just send me a DM on Facebook or Instagram.
All right. And I'm going to tag her in these posts. We're going to post this on Facebook as well. And then we'll put the links in the show notes on YouTube and also on our website. And yeah, just reach out to her. And Robin, thank you so much for jumping on. And again, like, thank you for putting me through that assessment. Made me think a lot. So guys, I mean, if anything, you definitely want to like work with her and get the assessment and have her look at that. And you might learn a couple of things. So Robin, thank you so much for jumping on. And guys, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you guys next time.